This is Wake Up Sunday Morning, brought to you from Celebration Church in Barrie. We are an Anglican Network in Canada congregation. Good morning, I'm Derek Welsman, here along with Pastor Brian McVitty. Delighted to be a part of your Sunday morning. Toast, coffee, eggs, and Wake Up Sunday Morning, a great breakfast combination. Today is our second back-to-school show, and today we are focusing on college and university. Perhaps you have a young person who has headed off to a college campus last week, or you are a college student just settling into life on campus. What are the challenges that lie ahead? What are some struggles for success as a follower of Jesus and for academics? It is a big investment to pay tuition and residence. How can we equip our young adults to succeed? Today we are interviewing Evelyn. She just completed her undergraduate from Trent University in Peterborough, and most recently she was at Queen's University in Kingston, graduating this past spring. You will hear Evelyn say that while Trent was a smaller campus, it is more hostile to the faith. Queen's is bigger and much more competitive, but more respectful of Christian believers. During today's show, Evelyn will also provide some tips on planning a summer job so that it not only pays those university bills, but also advances you towards your goals and builds some character as well. You will be pleased to know that Evelyn began this summer planting trees in Northern Ontario while enduring the bugs. And from there, she led the LIT program at Pine Ridge Bible Camp in Northern Saskatchewan. This month, Evelyn is beginning her first full-time job in a community in Canada's remote north. Her studies at Trent University and Queen's University, plus the experience from her summer jobs, have been key stepping stones into a full-time job. They have also been character-building experiences, and it has been a time where her faith in Jesus has been both challenged and deepened. It is a great pleasure to welcome Evelyn to Wake Up Sunday Morning. Here's Pastor Brian McVitty in conversation with Evelyn.
So we're pleased this morning to welcome Evelyn to the show. Evelyn is 22 years of age, and she's been studying at Trent University and then is doing some advanced studies at Queen's. So she's had the experience of both campuses. Now, when you were here in Barrie, you were able to have friends who were like-minded. You had a strong church, a strong family background. Talk about some of the values that you encountered when you first started at university.
So I would say Trent is known to be a very liberal school. So, in the classes, they're challenging all the views and all the ideas that you thought were to be, the right way. They were challenging all of those sort of ideas. So they wanted you to think out of the box and almost try and think the way that they wanted you to think.
Now, in addition to the open atmosphere at the residence and a sense of freedom and lack of bounds that the others in residence seem to feel, and some of the challenges at Trent in general. Talk about, as a person of faith coming on campus, how you felt in that atmosphere.
Yeah, it was interesting, the idea of wanting everyone to be the same way, and when you didn't fit that puzzle piece, not everyone understood. So the idea of with the partying and the drinking and all of that sort of stuff, if you didn't do that, everyone was very confused and wondered why you weren't, and there was an idea of conformity that everyone needed to be the same. And so when I didn't agree with that, people would often question me and often wonder why. I think the next idea is in classes, it felt like sometimes there was an open season on Christianity. The idea of, there's a lot of horrible things that have occurred that have happened because of Christianity. However, they tend to blame the whole of Christianity instead of, the person, and then blaming, the religion and thinking it's open season, even though if it was any other religion, things like that wouldn't have been said. So that was sort of an uncomfortable set for me. So I found in first year I didn't always voice that I was a Christian because I was scared and nervous and didn't know what to say in classes when they would talk about those sort of things.
Now, you mentioned that you found yourself in a very uncomfortable position in some of the classes and required all your wits as to navigate through some of these issues. You mentioned about a literature class where everybody was invited to bring in a Genesis story, beginning of the world story from different traditions. Talk a little bit about your experience in that class.
Yeah, so the project was everyone bring in a story that they felt was their creation story. So obviously I thought, well, Genesis, how God created the world, Adam and Eve, and brought in that story, brought in my Bible. And so I think I was the first or second to go in the class. And as soon as I finished my presentation, the prof immediately stood up and was going, "This is nonsense. This is a story. Why would you bring this? This is I think she used the word stupid. It's idiotic going on that this was not a proper creation story, even though it was a individual project of bringing what was, special to you." And she used the rest of the class to degrade my creation story, even though the rest of the class hadn't even presented. So it was just very strange to use class time to bash Christianity. It was almost like there was a spiritual warfare going on in that class of her going off on that and going on about her opinion of Christianity. Once again, it was like a open season.
You also took an anthropology course, and I can just imagine that was going to be a challenging environment for you to be in as well. Maybe you could say a few words about that.
Yeah, it's interesting because anthropology was one of the courses I was really interested in. So this was my first year. I had really enjoyed it in grade 11, I believe it was. And so I was really excited. But after this course, I gave up my passion of anthropology because it was basically all about, there was a unit all about evolution. And so we were studying primates and looking at how it related to humans. And when I think a classmate questioned this, how you keep saying this is fact, but I don't believe this is fact. And the teacher was saying, okay, it's not a question of if it is or if it is not. This is research, this is science. There is no way around it. We came from apes. And I think a lot of my friends, my brother as well, he has faced a lot of difficulty with this in the science field, and being a Christian, of that this is the way it is, this is fact, and if you do not think this way, then you should not be in this field. So it's hard having a faith or having a faith background in this field without everyone kind of tearing you apart as well.
Thank you for mentioning some of the challenges you faced in the classroom. Just on campus, I understand that there were some big issues being discussed also.
Yeah, so the social issues were kind of interesting in Trent, as once again it's a liberal school, so I found everyone was on the bandwagon with everything and everyone was supporting it and trying to find a voice for it. And so one of the ideas that were really popular and big on campus were transgender issues. So it's interesting with university because it's the first opportunity for you to really find your individuality, and I found that many people were finding difficulty in that, and maybe and that's why transgender was so big on campus. So that was really also the first time I'd really witnessed that sort of ideas, and seeing why people thought that and who thought that. And so it was interesting being one of the few people to really understand, or not really understand it. So that was an interesting situation on campus.
So Evelyn, many kids going from high school to university find it very academically challenging. It's a whole different environment. The professors are not there to babysit you. Say a few words about what you did or what you would suggest in order for students to be able to excel academically at the university level.
So I remember, I think it was my second or third week in university, and I went on a school trip for the weekend, and I remember everyone doing homework on the bus, but I hadn't brought any. I was like, oh, that's kind of strange. And when I got back, I realized I had forgotten to do a tiny project. It was worth like 5% of my mark, but I had forgotten to do it, and I panicked. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't hand it in. What do I do? So I went to my tutorial leader and went, I didn't hand this in. This is my reason. And she said, sorry, you missed it. You can't hand it in. And there was no other chance than that. And that was the moment that I realized the syllabus is your best friend. And I know your prof is going to say that. And you go, yes, yes, yes. I got this paper when I first stepped into the class. But grip onto that. That is your life support. So it says everything you need to know about the class. And so the next step is having that syllabus, but also having an agenda. I think that was my big idea too. And you can have an agenda in many ways. Of how I found it helped with me is I wrote out every single project there was, what it weighed, how much, or when the due date was. And I would write it all out, put it on my wall, actually print it out so that I could cross out everything and have a visual in front of me and force me to see this is what is due. And the next thing is obviously talking with your profs. No, they're not there to babysit you and say, don't forget about that essay, but they're also there for you to succeed. So going up to your prof and telling them your name and asking them questions, that's why they're there, and they really appreciate students really seeking help and creating those kind of connections.
Well, I know it's very tempting to hang out with your friends at Starbucks when on campus and nobody's looking over your shoulder or forcing you to do assignments. Talk a little bit more about some of your study habits that you found very beneficial.
So if anyone knows me, they know I'm a procrastinator. I am so bad at doing everything at the last minute. I'm always going, oh my gosh, it's 12 a.m., pulling an all-nighter here. And university challenges that because, there's essays that are worth 30% of your mark or presentations that are worth 20, and professors have seen everything. They can see through you. So it really demands you to look at your time, manage it, and figure out what's best for you. So I found what a really good thing for me was, of course, university, you want to have a social life. It's a big thing of, wow, I'm living with my friends on campus. This is so exciting. And there's the idea of study dates. I found that those were my favorite times, some of the best memories, of going to Tim's, getting a donut, getting a coffee, and sitting in the library all together and having that community to really push you and go, hey, put your phone down. Hey, don't look at that, and really focus and get in and have that accountability partner of going, hey, don't you have an essay tomorrow? Shouldn't you be working on that? So that's a big thing. But I would also say just looking in advance and figuring out your best study techniques and your best way. So for example, if an essay is due in 3 weeks, maybe start researching here and actually writing down, have research done by this date and have this done by this date. I found my best essay sort of technique was to start 3 weeks earlier, I believe it was, and go to the library, get every single book, find also a topic that you're interested in. That's the biggest thing. You have that freedom. And so when I was interested in a topic, I couldn't wait to get started. So sitting down, researching and writing down all your research and use highlighters and all of that sort of stuff is when you have the time and you're choosing a topic that you're actually interested in, the world is your apple and you'll do great.
As we think of back-to-school strategies, it seems appropriate to turn to the words of Jesus in Matthew 5, called the Beatitudes. There, Jesus says, "Blessed when it is righteousness that you seek." Whether it is college or wherever the Lord has placed you this fall, we want to be a light. We take you to the hometown of McMaster University, Hamilton, Ontario, for the song City on a Hill from the band City Harmonica.
Blessed are the poor, for the kingdom is yours. Blessed when you mourn, there's comfort in his arms. Blessed are the meek, with the will to your feet. Blessed when it's righteousness that you seek is beautiful. Beautiful like a city on a hill, lighting up the night for the glory grace of God. Blessed are you, making peace on earth. Blessed when you follow, even when it hurts. It's beautiful, beautiful, like a city on a hill, lighting up the night for the glory of the Lord. Rise and shine, when you shine, light of the world, we can't hide it. This beautiful light shines for all of the world to believe. We can be a city on a hill, a city on a hill.
You're listening to Wake Up Sunday Morning from Celebration Church. Here is Pastor Brian McVitty with recently graduated university student Evelyn discussing strategies for success at college and university.
Now, you had mentioned earlier some of the challenges to faith that you found in the classes, particularly in first year. What would you suggest as strategies in order to be able to grow and maintain your faith on the university campus?
So one thing I know that God blessed me with so much is my friend group. I had 5 girls who I was really close to, and we all lived together. And all of them happened to also be Christian, except I think one of them. But it was just a really wonderful friend group where everyone was supporting each other. And it was a time where if something difficult came, I could go to them and really talk about it and pray about it and have that sort of support system. Trent didn't really have a big Christian group on campus, so I think that was, for me, my Christian group. I think the other idea is that in Romans 12, verse 2, it says, don't copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. And I think that's the idea of, we don't have to conform to what everyone is thinking, what everyone is doing around us, but letting God work and live in us and be like God, then we can really shine and be a city on a hill for the university. And I think often when I just let myself be who I was and not conform to what everyone else was doing and really let God shine through me, that's when people liked me the best, of seeing the real me and seeing and really being drawn to the Christ that was in me.
And then you were mentioning that there's another verse that you found particularly helpful.
Yeah, so as I mentioned in other classes, I really faced fear because I was a Christian and it felt like I was the only Christian. And so I would never speak about my faith because there was an immense fear about it. And so with Psalm 46, verse 5, it says, God is in the midst of her, she shall not be moved. And so that was a big verse for me because I remembered, okay, so when I am alone and I'm feeling alone, I have to remember that God is in me. And so when I don't want to talk about him, I have to remember that he can talk through me and that there should not be any fear within the classroom. And so when I did start speaking up about my faith and speaking up about and taking out some lies that were said or trying to reclaim truths, I found people thanking me and going, whoa, thank you for saying that. I'm also someone of faith. And I was flabbergasted at how many Christians there were in my classrooms because all of us had so much fear. So I think with God, there is no fear. And I think we have to remember that when we are trying to live for him and seeing so many lies said within the classroom.
So, Evelyn, you've had the experience of being on campus in 2 different universities and fairly different universities here in Ontario. First, you were at Trent University in Peterborough, and now you're at Queen's University in Kingston. Talk a little bit about the differences between those 2 campuses.
So Trent, I have always thought of this comfortable, warm bubble. I've always thought of it as my home. I love when I think back to Trent. It is just an incredible place of community, and it's smaller. And so when I went to Queen's, it was a huge difference. It was almost like a culture shock. It's a huge university. It's built right into the city instead of Trent being sort of separate from the city. And so, biking through campus, it's daunting of even just how people dress. They're wearing like business suits and blazers and high heels to class. And I found that Queen's also is a very competitive environment. So everyone is trying to do their best. They're seeing it as a competition, and education is a competition. And it's definitely been a different experience for me going from one campus to the other. It makes me homesick for Trent.
Just curious as to your experience of being a person of faith on Queen's campus.
Queen's surprised me a lot of the comfort I found within classes. So many teachers talk about Christianity in a very positive light, and definitely professors I didn't even assume would talk about it in a positive light. And it feels like a comfortable topic. I don't know if it's because Queen's is older and maybe perhaps more traditional and not as liberal, but it was an interesting sort of change of just being able to be challenged in a very good way of my faith, even within the classroom, and hearing positive notions of it instead of constant attacks. So that was a really wonderful part of Queen's that I've been enjoying.
Well, Evelyn, let's turn now to your summers. You've had some very adventurous and challenging summers. So for 3 summers, you went up to Northern Ontario and you were tree planting. And from everything that I've heard, that's a very challenging environment. You're in the bush. You're in a camp in the bush. You had a late snowfall and you're in a tent, and black flies and mosquitoes are eating you up. How did you find the strength within yourself just not to quit after the first 10 days?
Yeah, so that was such a different world up there. It feels like you're in a different bubble, a different world, the challenges that you're facing because it's things that you've never had to face before. So I remember May 31st, there was a huge snowfall, and so I tried to unzipper my tent the next morning, and I couldn't because it was frozen shut because of the frost. And I was like, oh no. And I was so warm in my sleeping bag, and it is quite a different world out there. So it's, I think in that day I faced all 4 seasons. I had winter, and then, it cooled down a bit. It was super muddy, so there was spring, and then it was blazing hot suddenly in the middle of the day. It was like 30 degrees. And you were planting through that. And, it's the idea of just keep on planting no matter what circumstance you have. Always finding the joy in it, seeing the light, and laughing through all of the brutal moments, because sometimes it feels like it can't get worse, but just laughing through it all.
Well, that's amazing. You deserve full credit for sticking it out through 3 seasons of tree planting. Then at the end of each of those summers, you took a couple of weeks to go up to northern Saskatchewan and work at Pine Ridge Bible Camp. That's in the area of several First Nations communities.
Yeah, so Pine Ridge is a very unique situation, and a lot of these kids are coming from hurting backgrounds. So you really have to have the armor of God on when you're talking with these kids and having discussions and mentoring to them. It's a wonderful place where you can have really raw conversations with these kids. And often I felt like I didn't go through these things with the kids, but what they needed was an ear and just someone to love on them. So yeah, I would say that it definitely challenged my leadership skills, and being a leader and being someone that people could trust. And so being there for 6 years, I think, has really allowed me to become comfortable in that role and become comfortable within a camp counselor position. And so I've been able to mentor other campers coming up into leadership as well. And, just getting over yourself in some respects of, in grade 11 when I was first going up, I was still a shy, self-conscious teenager, and just being able to become a weird, strange, loud, crazy person that sometimes these kids needed, of just to have fun and to be that person for those kids, and just to get past my own insecurities and just become the leader that they needed.
Well, Evelyn, it's been a delight to have you in the studio today, and thank you so much for sharing so candidly about your time at university and then some of your summer jobs as well. You've certainly had some amazing experiences and managed to negotiate through the challenges of campus life, and then have some great character building and leadership building summers as well. You've got a Bible verse that has been key for you, and what this Bible verse has meant to you.
The Bible verse that has meant a huge ton for me is Proverbs 30, verse 18 to 19. 3 things are too wonderful for me, 4 I do not understand. The way of an eagle in the sky, the way of a serpent on a rock, the way of a ship on the high seas, and the way a man loves a woman. And it's just the idea of staying in awe of God and staying in awe of everything He's doing in your life, and really trying to pay attention to the little things that He is doing, of who's He placing in life, or the simple acts that are happening in your life.
So for those teenagers who are listening, and perhaps in a short while will be heading off to university themselves, why don't you close us with a prayer for them?
So, Lord, I just pray over all of the fears and the insecurities and the unknown going into the idea of university. It's a daunting experience. And, Lord, I just pray that your comfort, your warmth will surround these kids. And I pray that this experience will really draw them into you, and that they will rely and lean on you for things that they don't understand or may not comprehend or may not be used to. I just pray that they look to you, and I pray that as children of you, that they will fight to find the light within the world and be children of the light, and just be of you, and to stay in awe of you and really lean on you through this experience. Amen.
We hope that you have enjoyed our second Youth Focus show. Our special thanks to Evelyn, and a shout out to all the students out there who are heading back to school or who have already settled in. If you like what you heard, you can share this show. Wake Up Sunday Morning is available as a podcast. You can subscribe on iTunes or Google Play, or you can stream the show on the Celebration Church Barrie YouTube channel. As we close, we trust that you will be attending your own church today. If you are new to the area or you're searching for a Bible-based, Christ-centered place to worship, we want to invite you to join us at Celebration Church in Barrie. Every Sunday morning, 10:30 is service time, and we're located at 460 Yonge Street. And just to note that next Sunday is our Family Day and Church Barbecue. Love barbecues. Now, the worship will actually start a half an hour early next week, 10 a.m., and then the barbecue will follow. Join us, please, and bring the kids. There'll be a jumping castle and lots of games. That's next Sunday, 10 a.m. special time. Bring the whole family. As a blessing to all young people returning to school, here is a little of Andy Park with his sung version of Aaron's Blessing.
May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord be gracious unto you. May He bless you. May He shine upon you. May He bless you and shine upon you. May He bless you and shine upon you. May He bless you, and may He fill your life with peace. Oh, may the Father smile upon you. May He rain His love and His joy upon you. May He fill your life with peace.
I'm Derek Welsman on behalf of Pastor Brian and everyone at Celebration Church in Barrie. Have a blessed day.